Hi everyone, and welcome to our final Flip Collaborate recording for the TP. This is Karina, the UC, for Supporting Inclusion for Primary, and we're going to be looking at Assessment 3, the case study. Okay, let's get straight into it. So for this assessment, the word limit is 1,500 words with a plus or minus of 10%. So this gives you a range of between 1,350 words and 1,650 words. This isn't a huge word count, so you'll need to be succinct and direct in your approach to this case study. This is why following a really good structure to your report, and we'll go through this later, following a structure will help you to achieve everything within the word count. The 40% weighting of this assessment reflects the timing of it, in that by this stage of the TP you should be ready to make recommendations of pedagogical approaches based on your knowledge and understanding of diverse learners. This assessment is going to bring together all the learning that you've completed throughout the TP in this unit, on a policy level, at a whole school level, and also at a classroom level. And the due date is Monday of week 12. The assessment process is pretty clear from the details that you've been given within the assessment brief. The first step is to identify from the list of 7 students that you've been given in the assessment document. You need to identify 2 students with additional needs and 2 students from culturally diverse backgrounds. So you don't need to comment on all 7 students, it's just 4 students altogether. So 2 with additional needs and 2 students from culturally diverse backgrounds. The second step is to discuss. This is where you are covering what each of the learners' needs are. You're going to identify the behaviours you will see in the classroom from the different children, and you're going to compare and contrast the type of support that these learners with additional needs and culturally diverse backgrounds will require. There'll be areas where pedagogical approaches and needs will overlap for some children, and some which will be totally different. So this is where you're comparing and contrasting the support for these children. These are the recommendations that you would make based upon your knowledge of the student and those of best inclusive practice that you've covered over the TP, as well as being supported by academic literature and research. This includes when you're identifying the student needs. So this isn't an opinion-based piece. We don't want you to draw what the student's needs are based on your opinion. We want you to draw on literature to identify. We've drawn on so many fantastic readings and research over the course of the TP. It's really important that you now use these to support your recommendations so that your recommendations have been backed by research and what literature has determined as best inclusive practice. This is where you would draw on readings in the learning materials and also your wider research of journal and research articles. The final step of the assessment process is to consider. In this step, you need to draw upon your knowledge of best inclusive practices and consider what some of the predicted implications might be as a result of your recommended support options being in place for the identified students, and also for the other students in the class. Remember, we're catering for all students in the class, so how will all students possibly be impacted? You need to support this with academic literature too. This is a consideration of what you predict will happen based upon the recommendations you've suggested in the discussion. This assessment covers 4 criteria. Each one of these are equally important, and all of these must be covered within the holistic rubric to pass this assessment expectation. Think about all the elements that have been covered over the course of the TP that impact upon student learning. Some key words such as responsive teaching, supportive environments including the setting, the curriculum and the teacher, adaptable teaching practices, resources for inclusion, differentiation, modifying the curriculum, and a whole range of other directives found throughout our learning that promote best inclusive practice within a whole school and classroom context. If you're thinking about these and referring back to the criteria and the rubric, you're going to achieve success. Don't forget that editing is a vital part of the writing process and influences the way in which your message is interpreted by your audience. That's us, the markers. This is number 4, so written expression. And it's really, really important that this forms part of the rubric for each of the grades and will be followed consistently by the ELAs marking this assessment. Keep referring back to the rubric, but also keep in mind that a holistic rubric builds upon from the past level, so that students must achieve all of the descriptors within a grade before moving up to the next grade. Remember, this is a document. It's like a cheat sheet that you have, so use that rubric, because ELAs follow this when marking to ensure consistency and fairness. So, the report structure for the assessment means that you are able to use some varied formatting and frees up a little more of that succinct writing to the assessment expectations. In the form that bullet points are allowed, as are subheadings. You can have subheadings throughout. You can use these headings that I've given you here. However, you can change this, as these are just a guide. So this structure here that we've provided is just a guide. For example, you might break up the findings into A, B, C for each child, but this is completely up to you. As I said, it's just a guide that we've provided you with. It's not compulsory to follow this. However, we've found that doing this structure would enable you to respond in full to the expectations and allow you to maintain a flow for your assessment response. So here we have the introduction at 150 words. It's about 10% of the word count. And this should include information about the case, such as the school. You've been provided with the case study, and this needs to be drawn upon as part of your introduction. The school, classroom, and individual level perspective about inclusion. You can also include this information and all the things regarding that you've learnt throughout the TP. Okay, the findings, which we've recommended about 400 words. In this section, you'll include each of the learner characteristics or behaviours and your interpreted and supported learning needs for each of the children. Each child has different learning needs. What are they? And support this with research. Some of the needs might be the same and some might be different. So that's where you'll compare and contrast. So that's your findings. Recommendations. I suggested 400 words again, and this will cover the pedagogical practices that would be implemented for the learner. You might break this section up, but it's completely up to you. These need to be tangible recommendations centred on the school context provided in the assessment brief. You may refer to your own state policies in regard to funding and make recommendations in line with this. However, make sure you are providing realistic recommendations for this setting and this case. You've been provided with that school context in the assessment details, so use it. Show us that you're drawing from the evidence that's been supplied to you. Using academic literature to support your recommendations as evidence-based practices. This should add credence to your chosen pedagogical approaches. This isn't your opinion, it's a report and is to be written in third person and needs to be supported by academic literature. Your discussion needs to show how you would go about implementing these practices for each learner, monitoring progress, feedback, reflection processes for the teacher, student support staff and other stakeholders. The discussion is 400 words approximately. We also cover the predictions for what might happen as a result of these support options being in place for the identified students and also other students in the class. Think about those best inclusive practices that we have covered so extensively throughout our unit and draw upon these to paint a true picture of inclusion in practice. Then you have your conclusion to tie everything together. Again, that should be only about 10% of your word count, so 150 words. References and appendices, if you have any, will not be included in the word count. This final assessment is a reflection of your understanding across the whole unit, a culmination of your unit's work. Basing your pedagogical approaches upon the unit's teachings will ensure success with this assessment and also within the walls of your future classroom. If you follow this, you'll be certain to achieve success. So if you draw upon and have gone through the learning materials, selected those readings that maybe you found that really supported your way of thinking, absolutely use them. This is where your success will occur, by drawing upon what has been provided to you. This will show a whole understanding of our unit and its practical application. Finally, this is a support that's available to you as a student at Swinburne Online. You have your discussion board, and I cannot emphasize the importance of this enough. With participating in the discussion that's happening on these boards, as well as engaging with the learning materials and weekly activities. These all scaffold to your assessments, so they're going to assist you enormously in fulfilling the assessment requirements. We also have student advisors who can help you with academic skills, as well as research, writing and referencing skills. There's the assessment brief and rubric, and it's really, really important to keep going back to these as you complete your assessment. There's also, of course, our live collaborate for you to all bring your burning assessment questions to. It's very valuable to attend these, and we look forward to seeing you all at that session. Thanks for your time. I hope this recording has allowed you to gain some clarification and understanding where we are headed with this assessment task. Any further questions, don't hesitate to go to your discussion board to ask fellow students and also your ELA. Okay, thanks for joining us. Bye.